Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are out in the middle of the Great Basin in mid-July. It's warm out here, but I'm excited because we're going to talk about hot springs. So Nevada's got a bunch of superlatives, like it's the most mountainous state in the lower 48. It's got the darkest skies. There's more ghost towns in Nevada than any place else, but Nevada also takes my favorite superlative, which is the most hot springs. More hot springs in Nevada than any other state. There's something like 300-ish natural sources all over the place. And that can mean a variety of different things. You know, sometimes you can show up and it's a muddy field, and sometimes you show up and it's taken care of by the hot springs community, like the place I'm at today, which is on a BLM public lands hot spring, which means that it's maintained by the BLM and belongs to everybody to stop by and use. So through the years, hot spring has definitely become part of my identity. In like 2014, 15, 16, I became totally obsessed with going out and finding every hot spring there was to soak in Nevada. And back then, you know, you could get in them and you could find them and there was nobody there. You know, it was a completely different scene. And I think the internet is to blame. It's definitely ruined a lot of places. There's a lot of geotagging. Yeah, the internet has changed a lot of Nevada's best places for better or worse. Hot springs is definitely one of them. But back then, you know, we used to spend hours and hours and hours just obsessing over the atlas, trying to find all the hot springs in Nevada. I think we have found quite a few of them, which has been really fun. You know, we can suss out our favorite places to check out that are still pretty much a secret, that are so special that nobody will even post a picture of them on the internet. And then there's others like this one, which is probably the most well-known hot spring in all of Nevada. This place is not a secret. It's a good one for people interested in kind of feeling out the hot springs situation in Nevada to stop by. But if you're new to the hot springs community, or maybe hot springs curious, the first thing that you need to know about is that the hot springs community is pretty guarded. Nobody really likes to talk about where these places are located, and some of the most well-known ones are so easy to find on the internet. Like, you barely have to type in a search term and it will turn up the results that you're looking for. So the first rule of hot springs is don't ask where they're at. You know, that's just going to give you a big eye roll from a lot of the people in the hot springs community who have worked really hard to protect them and keep them these like wild natural soaks that they are, because they definitely behold this sort of type of magic. And then once you start location sharing and all of that, then it just gets kind of weird. So good rule of thumb, probably just don't ask where they are. And in the true spirit of adventure, it's more fun to go find them yourself. But it's not just hot springs, you know, all the good stuff in Nevada is that way. Out on the sagebrush sea, things oftentimes aren't as they appear. You know, people know Nevada as being desolate and, you know, dead and boring and who cares beyond Vegas. But what they don't understand is that this is one of the most amazing places, and they would never anticipate these peaceful hot springs like this right out here in the middle of it. So they're sacred places, holy places. Nevada's a misunderstood place, right? Like, it's not just hot springs. Everywhere out in Nevada's sagebrush sea is like this. People don't get it, you know, and then once you find it, whether it's your favorite fishing hole or backroads drive or Nevada hot spring, you know, it's like a gift. You have to work for it a little bit, and then once you log some hours, it just sort of appears and changes the narrative from not caring about it to doing everything you can to try to protect it. So Nevada, the silver state, is home to some of the largest mineral riches on planet Earth. So silver, copper, gold, and a long list of other minerals that beckon 19th century prospectors over the border usually forms when sulfur compounds with the earth, which is where its crust heats up from 200 to 400 degrees. So in other words, Nevada's mineral riches and thermal soaks pretty much go hand in hand. Like, even up in Virginia City, which is the site of the world's largest silver discovery to this day, they used to call the miners up there hot water plugs because where they worked underground, it was filled with all kinds of hot springs water, which resulted in really unbearable working conditions. And, you know, speaking of hot water just shooting out of the ground, Nevada was once the location of a bunch of really huge natural geysers, which is really fun to think about. One of them was in South Reno at Steamboat Hot Springs. And that was actually one of the 3 largest natural geysers in the country, like the same size as Yellowstone's Old Faithful. But it was disrupted when an earthquake kind of like rejiggered all of the natural geothermal energies there. So that changed it. And then also a gigantic geothermal plant has since moved in there and pretty much harnessed all of the geothermal power. But there was another huge one out by Beowawe, which is kind of near Battle Mountain on I-80 in northern Nevada. They were called the Beowawe geysers, and there were a ton of them up there as well, but also a geothermal plant was set up there and no more geysers. And then there's also some pretty famous ones that are out by Pyramid Lake, which were open to the general public up until pretty recently, like 25 years ago, but vandals ruined it for everybody and they shut them down. But they're up by the Needles on the northern edge of Pyramid Lake, and of course you can see them from far away. You can especially see them in the winter time, all the steam and geothermal activity, but not allowed to go there unless you're with a tribal member or are a tribal member yourself, of course. Basically become my personal identity, and we're out here in the Alkali again after camping all around Nevada on a long holiday weekend, and I couldn't think of a more fitting time and place to tie all the things I love together. So let's make a ring. I hope the wind doesn't totally mess with us, but we're gonna give it a shot. Here is the stone. If that doesn't look like Nevada hot springs on dry lake beds surrounded by alkali, I don't know what is, man. This stone is a piece of Royston turquoise that comes from the Tonopah area, and it was mined and capped by Denver Ottoson. And the second I saw this, I've been hanging on to this thing for months. I thought, I need to save that for a hot springs video, so here we go. So we're out here in the alkali. The sun's going down. It's a race with the light, but let's see how it goes. Oh man, sunset's popping over there. Oh! So my husband and I, like I was saying earlier, we love hot springs and have carefully studied and soaked in, I think, the most possible pools we could find throughout the years. But people have sought serenity in Nevada hot springs thousands of years before us. You know, we're certainly not the first people to do it, especially in a place like Nevada, you know, and the West. So the first residents of Nevada, of course, were the Native Americans who moved through the valleys with the changing seasons and treated the hot springs, you know, like the sacred places that they absolutely are. And then the next to show up were the European explorers. And of course, they did what they did and, you know, claimed land and basically took over. And at that time, the hot spring resort was a major trend. You know, that's back then, you know, starting in the late 1800s, other wellness practices started to become totally mainstream, where they believed it was vital to recover in a hospital with access to daylight and fresh air, or people started seeking out wellness retreats as a form of relaxation. think it's too windy. Like I can't, none of my solders are working.
Really?
Because of the wind.
Stop like right now.
Yeah, and there goes the sun. We just lost the sun. Man, it is freaking beautiful out here. Out here in the Alkali. No crickets, which is a freaking miracle. So these hot spring resorts started to pop up all over Nevada and the West. There were a bunch of hot spring resorts all throughout the desert, but the most famous that are still around are the ones that are in the Reno Tahoe area. So that would include Steamboat Hot Springs in South Reno. That one's been around for a long time and has drawn all kinds of socialites and, you know, everybody from Mark Twain, who named the hot spring after it reminded him of a steamboat chugging down the Mississippi River, to famous, you know, socialites and Comstock millionaires in Virginia City. So they all they would all come and frequent these hot springs. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. Well, you know, that light breeze really screwed me, but now we're doing this. Cheers, Elkie. For grub tonight, we've got some homemade calzones pre-made ahead of time and some delicious bag Caesar salad and a rawhide bone. Right, Elkie? He's a good boy. All right, where were we? Hot Springs Resorts, I think. Okay, last night before the wind started to take over, we were talking about how important it was in America during the late 1800s for people to recover with fresh air and daylight. So that started to happen in hospitals all over the place. The Virginia City St. Mary's in the Mountains is a great example of that, where they have giant porches and, you know, natural elements were important in the recovery process. So that basically started to happen with hot springs too, where they started to believe that, you know, being outside and being in these natural mineral waters was the best thing to cure whatever ails you. So they started popping up all over the country. There were a bunch in Nevada, which is always really fun for me to think about because, you know, you think about going out in the middle of the desert in Nevada and there's all these gorgeous, fancy resorts all over the place. There were some in Buena Vista Valley, which is south of I-80. And then there were others that were out by Golconda, which is kind of like right outside of Winnemucca. And then there's still a bunch of resort hot springs that are around today. There's one in South Reno at a place called Steamboat Hot Springs, which is pretty cool because you can still go there. And then there's another one in Carson City that's called Carson Hot Springs, of course. And then there's another that is down in Genoa, in Nevada's oldest town, and of course they all say that they're the oldest and they have the purest mineral contents, which is pretty funny. They're in that battle to say they're the oldest and the best, of course, but hey, can't blame them, I guess. So anyway, these natural resort hot springs are all over the place. There's even a bunch of resort style hot springs in Caliente, Nevada. But I don't know if you could call that one a resort. It might have some resort roots, but that one is down in that area. It's basically like a cult vortex anyway, because that's where FLDS leader Warren Jeffs was performing illegal underage marriages to children. And then he pretty much got caught. They figured out what he was doing there. And then afterwards, it became like a Scientology retreat. The Scientologists built like a rehab detox place called Narconon in that canyon. Anyway, there's still some evidence of hot spring resort style stuff going on there. The hotel's been closed, I think, since before the pandemic now. And of course, the town was named Caliente after agua caliente, hot water. So that one definitely goes back too. So this legacy of natural hot spring resorts is, all over the place. And I think that kind of like now, 150 years later, that sort of legacy still can carry on with the next generation in terms of like feeling like yourself again, feeling relaxed and reset out here in these natural hot springs. And just like what a wild idea it is to be out in the elements, sitting under the stars and just, out in a big old basin, just hanging out. It's pretty fun. That's at least what happened to us. We really got into this, like I was explaining, years ago, and it just has a way of totally getting under your skin, and it becomes obsessive fast about the next wild soak that you can find out here, away from everybody, out in the fresh air. And like I said, in the glory days, you'd show up and there was never anybody around. Now if you're at a hot spring and you find somebody, it's like, a true lucky day. Do you hear how fast those solders are going?
Yeah.
That's how fast they should go. So the first thing that you need to know about hot springing in Nevada, well, I guess the second to not asking where hot springs are, is knowing whose land you're on. In a state that is one of the biggest states, that's also one of the most publicly owned places. There's a figure close to like 80%, I think, of public managed lands. So they belong to everybody. I mean, you can ride a dirt bike in Nevada for 100 miles and never hit a fence line. Or, a lot of times you'll come up out in a field like this and find something really cool, like a fishing hole or a rock hounding site or a hot spring, and just think, because you have for hundreds and hundreds of miles gotten away with pretty much taking whatever's yours, that it's also yours. But, there's no trespassing signs posted for a reason. There's also some places that are kind of complicated in ownership because, the rancher's family and the natural hot spring has been around for 150 years, way longer than the federal land management agencies have been around, and then they lease them from the BLM. So it's like they own it but kind of don't. So that makes it complicated. There's also a lot of places too where people are just cool enough to let the public come on their land. So I cannot stress that enough. I think one of the most important things is no matter where you go in Nevada and whatever it is that you're doing, you have to know whose land you're on, before you show up. Chances are it is public land in a place like Nevada, but you don't want to be that guy that ruins it for everybody. Or sometimes there's a hot spring where the rancher will allow people to come in and check it out and have a soak, but you're not allowed to camp. And then you show up and there's people who are camping there. It's just like, come on, this is going to ruin it for everybody. So definitely pay attention to all the posted no trespassing signs. I mean, private property is private property. So the other thing too, in addition to knowing whose land you're on and just like public lands etiquette all the way around, I wrote an article a long time ago about hot springs etiquette, hot springs use, all around Nevada. And there's a bunch of things that you can do to kind of help preserve these places So in addition to not geotagging, that's the worst thing you could do, knowing whose land you're on, and just kind of trying to be respectful while you're out there, remembering, even if it is public land, you're always on someone's land, right? It's the federal government, it's privately owned, like, treat it like it's your own land, please. But then there's a bunch of other stuff that you can do that will help make sure that it's not going to just get shut down immediately. And those things include, don't smash a bunch of glass all over the place if you can help it. We do bring glass to hot springs sometimes, but we're not going to use it as a target practice or leave it or be dumb enough to break it. So try to not bring glass. If you're going to shoot guns or, launch fireworks or any of that, don't be a moron. This is a really fire dangerous state, and anything that you can do to just not do that in general out here. It's usually not very safe. Any of this brush behind me can catch on fire in an instant. And also it just kind of like makes it junky, and people leave all of their shells, and it's not a nice way to be around a place of relaxation and restoration. That's for sure. And then there's a bunch of other things that you can do to just make your time out here more comfortable. Like usually bring some kind of water shoe. Some kind of robe is usually nice to keep in the truck instead of always having a towel. And another thing to keep yourself safe too is always make sure that you've got a thermometer with you, because there's a lot of hot springs out here that look safe to get into, and then you try to get in there and you scald yourself. That's only happened to me, I think, about once in the times that I've been out at Nevada hot springs, but it still happened, and that was after I'd been in about a bajillion hot springs. So it just happens to everybody, and even from year to year, a lot of these hot springs can change environmentally. Like I was talking about with Steamboat Hot Springs last night being the site of some of the largest natural geysers, yeah, that is true. And then there was an earthquake and sort of like recalibrated all of the geothermal activity. Well, the same can happen without a geyser. Environmental changes even from year to year can happen and mess it up. So you got to be really careful, even if you've been to a bunch of different hot springs in the past. They can change from year to year. So just be really careful, because nobody wants to get scalded. So another good one to keep in mind too, that we see a lot of the time, and this I think happens just when you're new, you don't know. When you go out to a public lands hot spring, like, it's for everyone, right? It's not just for you and the people that showed up there first. And 9 times out of 10, people understand that and it's cool. But every once in a while you show up and there's somebody that's like, nope, it's fine, and you can get in after I'm done sort of attitude, and that's not cool. The other thing about that too is people camping right on top of the hot spring. That's not good. Don't do that. There's nothing worse than showing up and, like, even if the people are like, yeah, come on, get in. We have showed up to hot springs before on public lands, and I can sit in the tub and touch the RV. Like, it has been pretty disgraceful. So don't park right on top of the hot spring. We're camped at a hot spring right now, and we're at least 100 yards away. The thing about that too is that the BLM will require you to do that, because, out here in the middle of a desert, this is a life source, this water for all these animals out here. Antelope, there's usually tons of birds that are flying around that rely on the water source. Burros, wild horses, all kinds of creatures depend on this water as a life source. And if there's people that are always sitting in it or always around it, it scares them away. Also, on a lot of these places are on cattle ranches, and if you are too reliably around their trough for their cattle to get a drink out of, and they're too scared to come over, that's a big problem. So just remember, like, you're on somebody's land, you're in somebody's environment, home environment. Like, just don't be a dummy. Don't ruin it for everybody, please. So I think after you've been around enough hot springs, you'll start to recognize what the earth looks like around them, which is so cool. You know, you can start to read the landscape like that with all hobbies, right? And it's no different with Nevada terrain. You know, people think it's just one big, bleak, empty, dead basin that has nothing in it, and why would you care about it? You know, all the atomic bombs dropped there, and who cares, right? Well, out here in the sagebrush, you'll start to be able to see all kinds of stuff, like where a perfect backcountry ski line might be, or what looks like a cool, you know, alpine lake that's up there with a bunch of cool fishing. Or you might start to be able to see the alkali all around you. And alkali is basically this white powdery coating that you can see behind me on the ground. And a lot of times it's, you know, you can see it in like a playa, which is what we call a dry lake bed. The most famous playa in Nevada is definitely the Black Rock Playa, which we did a stargazing song dog piece out there a while back. But that is like, you know, one of the largest, flattest, driest places on the planet. But then, you know, you've got plenty of other dry lake beds all over Nevada. Nevada was basically like one giant prehistoric sea, at least northwestern Nevada, that this all covered, water all covered, and then it evaporated. And then now there are these like, you know, dry lake beds that seasonally will fill up with water. Like at this hot spring that we're at right now, this dry lake bed that you can ordinarily drive across in most other winters is totally full of water, which is crazy. It's like Pyramid Lake over there. So I think, you know, if you can kind of start to read the land around you, you'll figure it out. If you want to research it, there's plenty of information on the internet and books and all kinds of stuff everywhere about hot springs too. You know, and at the end of the day, nobody showed me where any of these hot springs are. We went out and found them, which is fun. That was what was so fun for us. It was like, you know, the last frontier of hot springs. But I can assure you that if you just go where the alkali is, that's where all of our brightest memories are anyway. So this one's for you, alkali. My hobbies collided: Song Dog Silver and Nevada hot springs.